Hey guys, Tegan back for another video. Today we're going to start up a new series talking about TULIP, also known as the 5 points of Calvinism. So today we're going to be talking about the T. I am joined by my other sidekick here, Obi. But if that's something that would interest you, you find yourself in the right place. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We exist within a culture that tells us to follow our hearts. Yet, what if our hearts are the problem? We exist within a culture that tells us man is mostly good, yet Scripture proves otherwise. Today, we're going to be talking about total depravity. What is total depravity, and what does it mean? But before we get into that, I think it would be wise to give a brief summation of TULIP as a whole, as this series is going to be going over that topic. All right, so TULIP is an acronym. It can kind of sum up Reformed soteriology, or Reformed, the study of salvation. How are we saved? Now, the T in TULIP stands for total depravity, which we're going to be talking about today. The U is unconditional election. The I stands for irresistible grace. The L, it stands for limited atonement. That's the most controversial point in this acronym. And the P stands for the perseverance of the saints. This articulates a view of salvation known as Monergism. Monergism states that we as human beings, as fallen human beings, cannot contribute at all in any respect to our salvation. It is only God. Even the action of belief is brought about directly by God and not by ourselves. This is what the reformers like Martin Luther, John Calvin, this is what these men articulated in their works. They articulated via the principle of faith alone through Christ alone. And in Ephesians chapter 2, we learn that it is by grace that we are saved, not through works, so no man shall boast. Now that grace is a free gift. It's not brought about by ourselves. That belief is a free gift. It's not brought about through our own power or our own desire. Now this viewpoint stands in direct contradiction to a broader viewpoint known as synergism. Now, synergism posits that there is a cooperative work between God and man towards man's salvation. Now, the synergist would say something like, God is stretching out his hands to you. He's reaching out. Man just needs to take a hold of that. This stands in direct opposition, as I said, to the Reformed understanding of soteriology, in that man is dead. Man is dead in their sins. We can't even reach out and grab the hand of God reaching for us. Now, this view was articulated by Chad Wright recently in the news on the Joe Rogan podcast. He shouted out men like Wes Huff, who's a great apologist, also reformed in his soteriology. He also shouted out R.C. Sproul, who was really a torchbearer, I would say, for this view amongst my generation. But that was enough rambling, so without further ado, let's start talking about total depravity. Now, to make this video easy to digest and understand, I have separated 3 thoughts about total depravity that we're going to be talking about today. 3 points. The first point is that total depravity is the term used to describe the impact of Adam's original sin upon the whole human race. Now we read in Psalms 51:5, "Behold, I was brought forth in guilt, and in my sin my mother conceived me." Now this illustrates that every man is born with an inherent sin nature, brought about through the fall, through our first representative, corporate representative, Adam. Now, if the fall is something you would like to learn more about, you can check out my video in the Biblical Metanarrative Series. It's the second video where we discuss the fall. So total depravity is a result of original sin. That's our first point. Now, our second point is sin has infiltrated every facet of the man. There is not part of mankind that is left untouched by sin. I mean, it impacts our mental faculties concerning how we think, how we reason. It touches our hearts, what we desire, what we love. And ultimately, it touches our physical bodies. As we read in Scripture, the wages of sin is death. This is illustrated whenever there is sickness or death. Now, to kind of further back up that point, if you will, we are going to be reading from the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. But before we read from that, I'm going to do a brief aside as to the point of confessions like these. Confessions like these are not to supersede Scripture. They aren't infallible. They aren't inerrant. They are simply a summation of orthodox or historical or denominational belief. A lot of times, for example, the London Baptist Confession of Faith, it will list what it wants to say and then give you a plethora of scriptures to back this up. Well, anyway, as to this point, the London Baptist Confession of Faith says the following: Our first parents, by this sin, fell from their original righteousness and communion with God, and we in them, whereby death came upon all becoming dead in sin and wholly defiled in all of the faculties and parts of soul and body. Now something careful and important to realize here is that total depravity touches every aspect of the human condition. No stone in the human heart is left unturned when it comes to total depravity. Nothing is left uncorrupted. That brings us to our third point. Total depravity does not mean that man cannot do something ostensibly good, meaning apparently good, but that sin has touched the totality of man. I mean, we read in Scripture that even our good works are like filthy rags when compared to the righteousness and the holiness of God. This means that because of original sin, even our good works have been colored by sin. Now, to illustrate this fact, if you will, direct your attention to Isaiah 64:6. For all of us have become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like filthy garments. And all of us wither like a leaf, and our wrongdoings, like the wind, take us away. I mean, one of the biggest objections to this idea of total depravity is, well, I do something good. I do this and I don't believe, or I do this and I'm not reformed. I'm not totally depraved. Yet Scripture bears out the fact that even our good works are like filthy rags to a holy God. And admittedly, that is pretty hard to wrestle with. But basically what that is saying is even our good works are colored by sin, whether it be unconscious sin, sins of desire, sins of motive, of untold motive, or it's the more apparent sins, lying, adultery, cheating, greediness, things like that. All of our desires prior to Christ are touched by sin, and that is because our first representative Adam sinned in the fall. Well, that brings us to the end of our video. I hope you guys enjoyed talking about the riveting topic of total depravity as much as I did. Well, do you guys think man is mostly good, mostly bad, or somewhere in between? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please drop a comment below. Next week, we're going to be talking about unconditional election. All right, so we've established man is sinful. Man cannot save himself. So how is man saved. We're going to be talking about that next week. Do all the YouTube stuff, like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Until I see you guys next Friday, God bless.